Okay, so we're starting with the detail of the placenta, and we have the umbilical cord here, and then where you see this little dashed line, that is actually the border between the maternal part of the placenta and the fetal part of the placenta. Okay, so everything that looks like a little leaf or fern, frond, is a chorionic villus. And each villus has within it a set of capillary beds. Okay, so deoxygenated blood is coming through the umbilical cord in the umbilical arteries, comes through an arteriole and into these capillary beds, and the maternal side of the placenta has these very curvy arteries that you see here, and they open up into these spaces around the chorionic villi. Okay, so you can see this bright red oxygenated blood is being dumped into these intervillous spaces or intervillous cavities. Okay, so these chorionic villi are just being bathed constantly in this oxygen-rich blood. Okay, so as the blood flows past them, they pick up the oxygen that they need and glucose, ions, whatever's in the plasma that they want and that can diffuse in, and they dump off their carbon dioxide, metabolic waste, whatever they want to get rid of. And so as the maternal blood is flowing past, you can see it's changing color. Okay, and there will be veins that are attached to these spaces that carry this deoxygenated blood loaded with whatever the fetus needed to get rid of away from these spaces. Okay, now the newly oxygenated blood will leave through the umbilical vein. Okay, the venules first, and then the umbilical vein. Here's the big umbilical vein in the umbilical cord. Okay, and we'll look at that again in a few minutes. And here is our full-term fetus. Well, we've really seen some big changes here now, haven't we? Look how huge that uterus is now. Okay, here's the urinary bladder. Remember how much room it had in the last image? Not much room anymore. Okay. Okay, here's the urethra. Okay. Here's the vagina, and here's the cervix. Look at how thin and floppy the cervix is. Okay, so we'd say that the cervix has become effaced, and effacement is a process that occurs to help the cervix be able to move to accommodate the passage of the baby through the birth canal. Okay, the amnion is apparent here, and also as this shell that we see over the fetus. We can also see that the opening in the cervix, the os, has increased in size substantially. So we've also begun to dilate. Okay, and the dilation is the other sign that the cervix is ready for birth to occur. Okay, and if we remove this plastic shell version of the amnion, you can see how it looks like the amnion is kind of bulging into this location where the dilation is occurring. Okay, and so that is the type of situation that could allow this amnion to rupture. Okay, and that would be what the woman would perceive as her water breaking. Okay. All right, now a couple of other structures you can see. Here's the placenta again, nice and high in the uterus where you want it to be. Okay, and we also have the umbilical cord here. Okay, and you can see it's really getting cramped for our friend here. That baby's really going to enjoy getting out into the world, and I'm sure the mother is going to be pretty relieved too. Here's her small intestine. Okay, so That's supposed to be down in here, but it's been moved out of the way to make way for baby. Okay, and here's the poor large intestine, at least the part of the sigmoid colon and the rectum. Okay, so definitely not much room over here either. So the inability to hold a lot of urine, possibilities of constipation, digestive issues, respiratory issues, because all of this is pushed up against the diaphragm. Okay, that's all obvious where it's coming from when you see how much space this fetus is taking up in the abdominal pelvic cavity. Okay, all right, so we're going to switch over now to our last model. This is our model of the fetus with the placenta and the umbilical cord. So here's the placenta here. Okay, and you can see all those branches of the umbilical artery and vein here that are running through it. Here's the umbilical cord. And if we open this up, you can see in the cut surface here, it kind of looks like two eyes and a little mouth. It reminds me, I'm going to date myself a little bit, of Mr. Bill, the old guy that used to be on Saturday Night Live saying, "Oh no." Okay, but that red right there that looks like Mr. Bill's mouth, that is the umbilical vein, and the two blue ones are the umbilical arteries. Okay, so picking up from the placenta again, our oxygen-rich blood is coming back to the fetus through the umbilical vein. Okay, and we'll have the vein come through the anterior part of the abdominal cavity to the liver, and then at the liver it's going to take a shortcut because its goal is now to get to the heart as fast as it can. Okay, so we have this little bypass or shunt here that allows this oxygen-rich blood to get to the vessel that's going to get this blood to the heart the fastest, which is the inferior vena cava. Okay, and that shunt that's connecting the umbilical vein to the inferior vena cava is the ductus venosus. Okay, and you can see it kind of cutting diagonally through the liver here. Okay, in the adult, since we don't, after our umbilical cord has been cut, this will convert into a ligament, the ligamentum venosum. Okay, and you actually have a segment of this apparent on the external surface of the liver, and that is the ligamentum teres, a round ligament that we've been looking at in the laboratory. Okay, so this allows that oxygen-rich blood to get up to the heart very quickly. You might remember when we looked at the fetal heart back in the first half of lab this semester that the inferior vena cava was red on that model. And that's why, because a lot of the blood coming to the inferior vena cava is this oxygen-rich blood coming from the umbilical vein and through the ductus venosus. Okay, so that oxygen-rich blood gets into the right atrium. And remember, we have that shunt to send it through to the left atrium, the foramen ovale. And then if any of that oxygen-rich blood gets into the right ventricle, as it comes out of the pulmonary trunk, it goes through the ductus arteriosus to get to the aorta. Okay, so that's how we get that oxygen-rich blood out to the body as quickly as we can. Okay, from the aorta, you can see the aorta doesn't have a bright red color to it here, and that's because this blood that's coming through the aorta is actually a mix of oxygen-rich blood from the umbilical vein and oxygen-poor blood from other parts of the body. Okay, so as we get down to the internal iliacs, we have branches that come off of those, which are the umbilical arteries, and those are going to come into the umbilical cord, and we see them as the umbilical arteries here. Okay, so that's the whole circulation in the fetus very quickly, and good luck on your practicals.